I think to myself, man, I have to sing every night or every other night. The artist Bruno Mars is well known, but no one knew the real Bruno. The kid who did 1,000 shows before he was 10, the teen who slept in empty zoos, or the man who lost everything gambling. When Bruno was 39, he chose to tell the whole story. Not just about the money he owes or Jessica leaving, but also about the bad things that happened to him as a child. What made him famous, the drug problem that almost ended his career, and the dark family secret he's kept for decades. Everything will be different after what he said. Most kids were still learning to read when Bruno Mars was only 4 years old. He was already putting on 2 shows a night, 5 days a week, while other kids played with toys. His family had a band in Waikiki, and he became the star of their show. The little Elvis-style dress he wore made people call him Little Elvis, and did fancy dance moves like they were made for him. He was so good that, when he was only 5 years old, he stole the show at the Aloha Bowl halftime show in front of 40,000 people. He went on the Arsenio Hall show when he was 6 years old. Then, in 1992, he had a small part in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas and was paid $600 for one day's work. He later joked that was his first time living in Las Vegas. He had already done almost 1,000 shows before he turned 10. That kind of beginning makes you feel something inside. That might be why, years later, he said it felt like break when he was practicing for the Super Bowl halftime show. Things didn't stay that bright for long, though. Bruno's parents split up when he was 12 years old, and the family act stopped. All of a sudden, there was no money, no stage, and no lights. Bruno slept anywhere he could find a place to do so with his dad and brother. Sometimes in a yellow '93 Cadillac, other times on Waikiki roofs, and even once in an empty bird park where peacocks screamed all night. They didn't have a real bathroom, so to take a shower, they'd sneak into hotel pools. Spam musubi from 7-Eleven was often all I ate for dinner. They didn't have power for 5 months. He played the guitar at night because they didn't have enough money for amps. Kids made fun of him at school for wearing clothes from a thrift store. But Bruno didn't give up. He learned to fake being Michael Jackson to make $75 a night, which he used to buy demo tapes and bus fare. He became tough because of that fight. A music company heard his tape in 2003 and said he should be the next Ricky Martin. He was asked to sing in Spanish. He didn't want that, even though he didn't write in Spanish. The record company didn't want him to be their idea of a Latin singer. So he chose a name from his childhood, Bruno. It was after a famous boxer named Bruno Sammartino, and he added Mars. Why? Because a girl told him he was so sure of himself once. You must be from Mars. He was 18 years old when he moved to Los Angeles in June 2003. He got off the plane with just $600, 3 demo CDs, and a bag tag that said Bruno Mars. He lived in 4 different places in his first year. Among them were a $40 a night motel on Sunset and a small room in Koreatown that he shared with 6 other men. He fibbed to get a job as a DJ on Van Nuys Boulevard, even though he had never used DJ gear before. He lost his job after 2 nights, but the $75 he made kept his phone from being turned off. He only ate 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box for a few weeks that summer. Motown made him an offer in February 2004. It was only 3 pages long. That was funny, Bruno said. He had seen breakfast menus that were bigger. The record company didn't know what to do with him. They called for a Latin pop singer. After 9 months, they fired him without putting out a single song. It made me feel bad. He already told his family back home that he got signed, but it was lucky that he didn't. Philip Lawrence was another artist who stopped by Motown at the same time. They became friends. They swore to each other that record companies would not be able to ignore their songs. Bruno and Philip were poor and determined by 2006. There was a small studio in Hollywood, and Philip parked his beat-up '99 Toyota Corolla outside. That's where they wrote their songs. It was run by Ari Levine. He had gear. Philip and Bruno had thoughts. As payment, they would get him tacos from 7-Eleven. They would yell, "That's a smeeze," whenever a sound or beat felt good. The Smeezingtons became their name because of that. 6 days a week, they worked 10 hours a day to study hit songs and learn how to write their own. Before putting out even one song, they learned more than 1,000. At that point, Bruno's sister Hemi stepped in. One of his demo CDs got lost with a man named Mike Lynn while she worked in fashion in West Hollywood. Mike did work for Dr. Dre. At first, he almost threw away the CD because the voice sounded funny, like a mouse. There was a 43-second high note by Bruno, though, that made Mike pause and play again. He flew Bruno to record One Studios for a meeting. Even though they didn't offer a deal, the fact that someone important had seen gave Bruno a huge push. Things can change in LA if you see the right person. Menudo paid them $20,000 for a song they had written for themselves called Lost. This helped them stay alive. They did just enough to stay in their place without getting thrown out. The song they wrote for Flo Rida's Right Round was their big break, though. It became a hit and was downloaded 636,000 times in its first week. At that time, it was a computer record. Then they wrote Nothing on You by B.O.B., which was also a hit. Bruno's album, Just the Way You Are, came out in 2010. Before that, songs he helped make had already been downloaded more than 15 million times. Bruno Mars didn't just appear out of nowhere. The first thing he did on his own was an EP called It's Better If You Don't Understand. Not much was said about it when it came out on May 11th, 2010. This song only lasts 13 minutes and has 4 songs. It had only sold 27,000 copies in the US by the end of 2011. It looked small, like something you'd forget. There were songs on that small EP, though, that would become the foundation of something much bigger. After only 5 months, on October 4th, 2010, he put out Do Waps and Hooligans. It was a huge hit. The record, which cost only $70,000 to make and didn't use any samples from other albums, went 7x platinum in the US and had over 15 million sales around the world by 2020. It was number 1 on the official record chart in the UK for 400 weeks in a row. That's almost 8 years, longer than even Thriller or Abbey Road. After that came the songs. His first single, Just the Way You Are, hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 8 weeks after it came out on August 7th, 2010. It was number 1 for 48 weeks and sold 13 times as many copies. It was one of the top 25 digital songs of all time, with 6.7 million sales just in the US. After that came Grenade. During its busiest week, 559,000 people downloaded it. That week's sum was the 8th highest in the history of music. Not only did it win the top spot in the US, but also in 15 other countries. It didn't end there. Grenade was number 1 on Billboard 3 times between January and March 2011. Only 5 other songs have ever done that. By March 2011, Bruno had 2 songs that had sold more than 5 million copies in the US. Lady Gaga was the only other act to do that before him. The music business took notice. In his first year, the Grammys nominated him for 7 awards, including Album and Song of the Year. That had not been given to a man's solo debut since Lauryn Hill's. He didn't win any of the big awards, but his song, Just the Way You Are, won Best Male Pop Voice. He was only 25 years old, making him the youngest man to win the award since Stevie Wonder in 1974. Soon after, Billboard named him one of the top Hot 100 artists. The IFPI said he was the best-selling act in the world in 2011. He even beat Adele's late-year surge. He wasn't done yet, though. Locked Out of Heaven came out in October 2012. It got off to a slow start, starting at number 34 on the charts. After that, it went up. It went straight to number 1 for 6 weeks, from December 22nd, 2012 to January 26th, 2013, a span of 11 weeks. That made Bruno the first male solo artist since Bobby Vinton in 1964 to get 4 number 1 songs on the Hot 100 in his first 2 years. That was something not even Michael Jackson did. Also, sales kept up. In the US, the song got 1 million downloads in just 10 weeks and went 10 times platinum in the end. After a while, Spotify streams went over 1.8 billion. Some people didn't see it coming. Rolling Stone called it the Police revival that no one asked for but everyone needed. The EDM music that had been dominating the charts was broken up by that Jamaican rock beat. Bruno changed the whole sound of pop radio in less than 4 minutes. Strange Jukebox wasn't meant to be crazy at first. The record company wanted a tight, catchy dance recording. But Bruno and his team secretly made the idea bigger. They overspent and tried 9 different styles, from the disco shimmer of Treasure to the bold, sexy rock of Gorilla and even reggae with Show Me. The label went crazy. In one memo, it was said that radio stations wouldn't play a record this crazy. Bruno didn't give up. In order to pay for live horns and old gear, he even gave up 4% of his future earnings. It paid off to take the risk. The album sold 6 million copies around the world in just 1 year. The critics were shocked. Spin magazine said it was like listening to a radio at 3 a.m., strange and interesting. And acts like Dua Lipa and Harry Styles would later follow Bruno's lead in combining different types of music. There were more fireworks at the 2014 Grammys. Best Pop Vocal Album went to Unorthodox Jukebox, which also won 2 other awards. Engineers found that each song had more than 120 separate audio tracks. This was more than any other nominee that year, and even more than Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. Someone complained to the FCC about a 0.6-second shot of Bruno thumping his chest during his Gorilla act that same night. It was meant to look like a rebel. He didn't get fined, but it did put him in the Guinness World Records for the fastest act on TV to lead to an obscenity review in 2015. Things sold a lot more after the Grammys. The album Unorthodox Jukebox went up 171% on the Billboard 200. Since Alanis Morissette in the 1990s, that was one of the best Grammy Week boosts. After that came Uptown Funk. It began as a jam session in a temporary studio on May 1st, 2014. Mark Ronson still has the first version marked up in his email in the form of a voice memo. The last song was written by 11 people and was the subject of 5 cases. It finally came out on November 10th, 2014. It went straight to number 1 and stayed there for 14 weeks, from January 17th, 2015 to April 18th, 2015. Before Old Town Road came along, that was the longest run at number 1 in the decade. At its peak, 300,000 copies of the song were downloaded every week, and 15 million copies were streamed every day around the world. It became the best-selling jazz song since I Feel Good in 1965 in the UK, where it sold over 1 million copies in just 10 weeks. People were crazy about it. Delta Airlines even said that the number of first-class drink orders went up by 37% the month it became their boarding song. It was called Uptown Drunk by someone at the company. The BBC even used the speed of the song to teach CPR in 2015. His next big move almost didn't happen, though. The label wasn't happy with Bruno's 24K Magic when he turned it in 2016. It was 33 minutes long and only had 9 tracks, which is less than some EPs. Bruno was firm, though. He didn't want it to skip, so it would sound like a party mixtape from the 1990s. It swept the Grammys on January 28, 2018. Album, record, and Song of the Year went to 24K Magic. That makes it only the second R&B record of the decade to do all 3. Won 6 awards in one night. The results came right away. That's What I Like saw a 130% increase in streams, and the song went on to become 7x platinum. It had sold more than 5 million copies around the world by April 2018, but it never made it to number 1 on the Billboard 200. After that, the trip was just as crazy. From March 28, 2017, in Antwerp, the 24K Magic World Tour went on until December 30, 2018, in Honolulu. There were 215 shows on 6 countries. His show in Auckland, New Zealand, sold 48,583 tickets, 4,100 more than Beyoncé's 2016 show there. This broke her record. There were 3.5 million ticket sales and $367.7 million in earnings by the end of the trip. That made it one of the 10 most successful shows ever. It even made more money than the first U2 Joshua Tree Tour and Lady Gaga's Monster Ball. Each and every song on 24K Magic was made with crazy care. The main song's talk box intro was a lot like Computer Love from 1987. Babyface's hit songs from 1994 could be heard in Versace on the Floor's Smooth Sounds. A 25-year-old console was used to mix the Cardi B and Finesse version so that it sounded like it was from the early 1990s. There was no chance in the 9-track count either. Bruno said that Bobby Brown's Don't Be Cruel cassette was his best. It had 9 songs on each side. It got great reviews. Some people said the record was pop's most valuable history lesson, and others said it brought funk back into the mainstream at a time when EDM drops were all the rage. And he still had more plans to surprise her. Bruno made the hook for Gucci Mane's Wake Up in the Sky in less than 30 minutes in September 2018. The song came out on September 14th. It got as high as number 11 and stayed there. It had been streamed 1.4 billion times on Spotify by July 2025, which is more than many number 1 hits that year. Las Vegas was getting late at night. It was packed in the Dolby Live Theater. Bruno Mars came out in public wearing a gold tux at 11:47 p.m. It got quiet in the room. He finally said it. Silk Sonic is real. The music began a few seconds later. The room was filled with a smooth, old song. It was called Leave the Door Open. And at exactly 12:01 a.m., everyone could hear it drop. It wasn't just liked by some. They really liked it. It went straight to number 4 on Billboard, and then to number 1 in just 4 weeks. It stayed there for 2 whole months. The song had been played on Spotify more than 2.3 billion times by the middle of 2022. Silk Sonic wasn't just a dream. They couldn't be stopped. They went on stage at the Grammys a year later. The men were both dressed in white tuxedos. In back of them stood 18 string players. Bootsy Collins was sitting on a velvet chair like a queen. People in the crowd got up when the song was over. That night, Leave the Door Open won Best R&B Performance, Song of the Year, and Record of the Year. It came out in November and is called An Evening with Silk Sonic. In the old days, it was recorded in one room with no fancy tools. It was all analog. There was something very 1973 about the sound. It sold more than 104,000 vinyl copies in the first week. More than 30 years have passed since the last big record release by an R&B act. Care was taken with everything. Bruno taped 16 different takes of just the snare drum for one song. At 3:07 a.m., Anderson .Dupac played his last drum solo on 777. After hours of tequila-fueled traffic jams, One take only. That was all it took. Silk Sonic's tour had made almost $145 million from just 37 shows by the end of 2022. That's about $4 million every night. A single ticket cost some fans as much as $6,500. That's pretty good for a band trying to sound old school in this digital world. The surprise then came. Bruno sent a message on August 16, 2024, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Get some tissues. There was no plan for what to happen. After a few minutes, Lady Gaga smiled and dropped die. It was everywhere. That's 27.4 million plays in just one day, which broke the record for most streams. That was more than Easy on Me by Adele. The music video looked and felt like a movie. 16mm film was used to shoot it. There was only black and white. One Last Dance had only two voices, a chandelier, and waves of Morse code that fans eventually figured out. In 32 countries, the song sold more than 10 million copies and topped the charts for 18 weeks in a row. There was a lot of money to be made from it, though. It made almost $1 million a day in printing during its busiest week. That song was worth more than $11 for every second. Bruno and Gaga sang it at the 2025 Grammys with a gospel band behind them. People called Bruno a human saxophone when he played a long, strong note that lasted more than 11 seconds. The most popular tweet at the time was about that event. But what was the craziest part? One take was used for the last voice. It was 4:12 a.m. Bruno had just hit the studio wall with a tequila bottle. At 3:18, you can hear the glass breaking in the song. He didn't change it. He said it made the song sound real. Then Blink-182's Rose sang a song called APT. A 9-second guitar riff on TikTok was her way of teasing it. 42 million people had watched it in 12 hours. When the full song came out, it went straight to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, making it the biggest K-pop female duet launch ever. 100 million people watched the neon-lit, color-flashing video on YouTube in just 19 hours. That broke all records. After 9 months, Rose was playing at SoFi Stadium when the lights went out. Then Bruno showed up. The stadium blew up. The two of them singing APT made sounds that were louder than a jet engine. 2.5 tons of confetti fell at once. That same night, Spotify said the song had over 80% more streams than usual, with 300 favorites. It was back near the top of the charts almost a year after it first came out. Some people didn't know what APT stood for. Finally, Bruno told us what it meant. I meant tango after the party. He said it was based on a night in 2019 in Buenos Aires when he and Rose danced until dawn. It's on video, but Bruno can't get to it. He made a joke that Rihanna is the only one who can open it. The song had been played over 3 billion times by August 2025. Blackpink's world tour made an extra 48 million won from merchandise sales thanks to the performance. Bruno kept getting bigger in all kinds of music. But there was something more personal going on behind all the lights and records. They met at a hotel restaurant in New York in the spring of 2011, long before the Grammys and shows. She had just come back from an interview to be a model. He was done with the show. They looked at each other. His body did not move for 40 minutes. He finally walked over. They talked for a long time, even after the lights were turned off and the chairs were stacked. She gave up everything and moved across the country to be with him in less than a year. She slept on an air mattress at first while he traveled the world. But over time, they made a life for themselves. They had a house in Studio City and a dog named Geronimo by 2014. Bruno didn't talk about her much. In an interview, he called her my rock once, then he went on. Even about the sad song, When I Was Your Man, he wouldn't say much. He said it was like being slid up on tape. Some people thought he wrote it when things were bad between him and Jessica. She didn't go to events very often. Only 3 red carpets in 13 years. And then nothing. And fans saw something strange in late 2024. Her anniversary posts were gone. After a few days, Bruno flew to Tokyo by himself. The gold chain she gave him was on him, but he had it on backwards, to keep her initial secret. Then someone said something about Jessica's January 2025 beach photo. Someone asked if she and Bruno were no longer together. She said that she would always be proud of and happy for all of his accomplishments. 2 cheers from far away, only 15 words. But that was enough to make the internet explode. People began to dig. She was in San Juan with her parents for Christmas. His show was in Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. They hadn't been apart in December for more than 10 years. According to sources, they were living separate lives. Some people said that he tried to make things better, but instead made his Vegas shows longer. The strange part is here. It was never official that they broke up. She still checks out his Instagram. He still likes the posts she makes about her clothing line. The house is still owned by both of them. Some say that when she comes to town, she stays in the guest room. Some said she was seen behind the scenes at one of his May shows, but there were no pictures ever came out. It all began on March 15, 2024. Something on News Nation was shown. It didn't name any sources, but that didn't matter. It was such a crazy claim that it caught fire. They said Bruno Mars owed MGM Resorts about $50 million because he had racked up debt from gambling. Even better, he was said to be paying it off with his Park MGM residency shows. The internet went crazy in just a few hours. The number was repeated over and over on gossip blogs. There were a lot of posts on Reddit saying that MGM now pretty much owned him. It was also talked about on talk shows. Shane Sharp even told the crowd that he had heard Bruno lost $17 million at blackjack in just one night. It wasn't important if it was true or not. The picture was too good. A famous singer from around the world who speaks about wealth and gold, but is actually stuck in a mountain of casino debt. It was made for news stories that go viral. Bruno broke was all over the place in just 2 days. And all of a sudden, the phrase Bruno Mars, 50 Millar, or debt, was showing up in more than 4 million Google results. Every single thing led back to a single vague claim. MGM Resorts quickly replied that same day, not with vague PR speak, but with a direct and clear truth. Forbes and Billboard were told that Bruno didn't owe them anything. Their exact words were no debt. They even said that they respected each other in their relationship. They also made sure everyone knew Bruno was one of the best talents in the world. It wasn't just to keep his reputation safe. There was more to MGM's plans. Investors might be wary if people really thought their main storyline was drowning in debt. It might even be against the law. There were already rumors going around that MGM faked the story. To make more money, this is why. But their formal denial was strong enough to put an end to that idea. Within 3 days, big news outlets like Variety said the same thing over and over again, and MGM's stock price didn't change. Wall Street seemed to agree with them. But Bruno didn't put out a dull message. He made fun of the whole thing. He looked out at the crowd at his show at Park MGM on April 12th and said, "Since they said I'm responsible for 50 mil, my phone has been dry." He meant it. The crowd yelled, "Where are my friends when I'm up?" Twitch users cut, shared, and watched that one moment over 6.8 million times in just one day. After a few months, on January 28, 2025, Spotify told him that he had reached 150 million weekly listeners. Bruno shared it again and wrote, "Keep streaming, and I'll be debt-free in no time." After 2 weeks, he shocked everyone by showing up on stage at SoFi Stadium with Blackpink's Rose. His first line, "Almost out of debt." It got 32 million views in just 3 days on Instagram. The story lost its power every time he joked about it. People shared everything he said. It got the word out about his shows and songs for free. Still, a lot of people believed it in the first place. $50 million seemed like a big amount, but it wasn't impossible. People who like to gamble a lot often bet $50,000 on a single hand of blackjack in Las Vegas. That much money would add up to $50 million if someone like Bruno lost it 1,000 times over a few years. Experts on the harm of gambling pointed this out. It's like saying the math made sense. Bruno had also said in the past that he began gaming before he was old enough and that he lost all of his money in a poker game. It seemed even more real after that. Adding that to his huge salary, he supposedly makes $1.5 million per show, makes him about $90 million a year. And it wasn't hard for his fans to picture him living like Sinatra did today. People can win and lose a lot of money under the same bright roof.